All right, let's slow this down and really walk through it together, because this whole thing unfolding in London right now, it's messy, it's uncomfortable, and honestly, it's kind of tragic in a very modern, very public way. So here we are, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, back in the UK, back in court, and somehow, despite years of planning, statements, documentaries, books, podcasts, interviews, and speeches about truth and accountability, this is the moment where everything starts slipping through his fingers. This lawsuit against the British tabloids, specifically Associated Newspapers, the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday crowd, was supposed to be the moment, the big stand, the moral showdown, David versus Goliath, except David has a Netflix deal and Goliath has a legal department that hasn't slept in weeks. Harry has been insisting for years that the press illegally gathered information about him, hacking, blagging, conspiracies, backroom deals. He framed it as a righteous crusade, not just for himself, but for everyone who's ever been chewed up by the tabloids. Big stuff, heavy stuff. And then the trial actually starts. And almost immediately, things start going sideways. First red flag, and this is not a small one, key members of his legal team resign. Not reassigned, not quietly swapped out. They straight up walk away, mid-case. That's not normal. That's not creative differences. That's your star quarterback dropping the helmet and heading to the locker room while the game is still on. Legal insiders are basically saying the quiet part out loud. This wasn't a reshuffle, it was a retreat. They saw where this was heading and decided they didn't want to be on the sinking ship when it went under. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Because the tone in court shifts fast. Harry comes in swinging with these massive allegations, illegal behavior, criminal tactics, journalists acting like spies. But then the defense starts punching back, and they don't hold back. They don't just challenge the claims, they challenge him. And this is where it gets personal. Harry accuses two royal journalists by name, Rebecca English from the Daily Mail and Katie Nicholl. Yes, that Katie Nicholl, the royal commentator who's been on TV forever. He's essentially saying they engaged in criminal behavior to get information on him and people close to him. Criminal. That's a big word. You don't toss that around lightly in a courtroom. Except the defense comes in with receipts, and suddenly the story isn't so clean. Let's start with Katie Nicholl. The defense says actually she wasn't lurking in bushes or hacking phones. She was invited by Harry personally to a private party back in 2011 at Kensington Roof Gardens. Not exactly the setup for a shadowy criminal conspiracy, is it? And it doesn't stop there. Apparently, they stayed in touch afterward. Same social circles, same events, same rooms. Which leads to the most brutal moment of the whole thing. According to the defense, Katie Nicholl's response to Harry's accusations was basically, "No, Harry, you invited me." Oof, that one lands hard. Because suddenly the image of Harry as this completely helpless victim starts cracking. This isn't a faceless journalist stalking him. This is someone he knew, someone he socialized with, someone he benefited from when coverage was positive. And that's the theme that keeps coming back. Not innocent victim versus evil press, but complicated relationships, blurred lines, give and take. Then there's Rebecca English. Harry's lawyer, David Sherborne, tries to introduce an email from 2010 where English allegedly contacted a private jet company asking about flight details related to Harry's then-girlfriend, Chelsea Davy. Sherborne frames it like a smoking gun, proof of illegal behavior. The defense shuts it down almost immediately. They say the email doesn't prove anything unlawful, no hacking, no deception, no crime. And they point to English's long career as a legitimate royal reporter, her professional access during Harry's time as a working royal, and the reality that journalists ask questions. That's their job. And here's where the optics really turn against Harry. Because as the defense methodically dismantles these claims, the journalists start looking human, professional, grounded. Meanwhile, Harry starts looking personal, emotional, like this isn't about reforming the media, but about settling old scores. You could see it on him in court, the stress, the exhaustion. He looks older than his years, smaller somehow. The irony is brutal.
This is the man who spent years railing against press intrusion, now sitting under a microscope, while the entire world watches him try to destroy the reputations of two journalists, one of whom recently battled cancer, the other who's covered the royals for decades. And then the legal team walking away. One analyst summed it up perfectly. When solicitors resign mid-case, it's usually because they believe the client's instructions are unsustainable or the evidence has collapsed. They're not abandoning the law, they're abandoning his version of events. That's devastating, because this lawsuit wasn't just a case, it was supposed to be the cornerstone of Harry and Meghan's entire anti-media crusade, the proof that they were right all along, that they were telling the truth while everyone else lied. If this collapses, and right now it looks like it's collapsing in slow motion, it's not just a legal loss, it's a symbolic one. It hits his credibility hard. It reinforces the idea that he's combative, thin-skinned, unable to separate criticism from cruelty. And yes, there's money on the line, a lot of it. Legal fees alone could be massive. But the reputational damage, that might be worse. Meanwhile, the journalists are fighting back, not hiding, not apologizing, saying outright that Harry is rewriting history to suit his narrative. And the trial shifts. It's no longer about what happened 10 years ago. It's about Harry's judgment, his relationship with the truth, whether this is justice or just a personal vendetta. And that image, Harry sitting alone in that courtroom, it's hard to ignore. Miserable, diminished, like a kid wearing a suit that doesn't quite fit. This was supposed to be his big moment. Instead, it's turning into a public unraveling. And where's Meghan? California, Montecito, an ocean away. No court appearances, no hand-holding, no visible support. For a couple that built an entire brand on us against the world, the silence is deafening. It raises uncomfortable questions. He moved continents to protect his family, and now he's standing alone, facing the consequences of a war he started. Sources say the mood around him is bleak, tense, heavy. That legal resignation wasn't just tactical, it was a vote of no confidence. And you can see the emotional toll, his posture, his expression. That defiant spark he used to have? Gone. He's caught between two worlds, the royal one he says rejected him, and the new one that suddenly feels very far away. The California dream feels distant when you're sitting in a wood-paneled London courtroom watching your narrative fall apart. And here's the deeper problem. Harry tried to fight this like a PR battle, statements, narratives, moral framing. But courts don't care about storytelling. They care about evidence, cross-examination, facts. There's no media strategy left to execute. That might be why Meghan isn't there. This isn't a brand moment. This is a legal reckoning. And it's crushing him. He wanted to be seen as a warrior for justice. Instead, he looks stranded, allies gone, strategy exposed, alone. This isn't just about tabloids. It's about the mistake of confusing publicity with power.
Okay, quick pause here. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments what you think is really going on here. Is this about justice, ego, or something deeper? Because when you strip away the royal titles and legal jargon, this whole saga becomes a masterclass in how not to handle fame in the modern era. Harry's playing this like it's still the 90s, like crying invasion of privacy automatically wins sympathy. But people are smarter now. They see the contradictions. You can't sue the press for invading your privacy while selling every detail of your life to Netflix. You just can't. That irony is killing him in the court of public opinion. And Meghan's absence, it speaks volumes. This doesn't look like a united front, it looks like strategic distance. Harry has lost the narrative, lost public sympathy, and now he's lashing out at journalists, at institutions, at anyone who challenges him. Even his own lawyers have had enough. I'm not saying tabloids are saints, they're not. They're ruthless, but Harry's approach is backfiring spectacularly. He's not reforming anything. He's not changing the system. He's burning goodwill. And the saddest part? None of this was necessary. He could have walked away, focused on charity, lived quietly, but he couldn't let it go. Now he's trapped in a mess of his own making, unraveling in real time in front of the entire world. At this point, it's hard to feel sorry for him. He wanted a reckoning, and he got one. If you made it this far, thank you for listening, thank you for being here. All right, let's keep going, because this story doesn't just stop at the courtroom doors. The legal drama is only the surface layer. What's underneath is where it gets really uncomfortable. Because once you zoom out, this whole saga starts looking less like a battle for justice and more like a slow-motion identity crisis. Think about it. Harry didn't just sue a newspaper. He built an entire post-royal life around the idea that he was wronged, silenced, hunted. Every project, every interview, every carefully timed reveal fed into that central story. The understood prince versus the cruel machine. But now he's in a place where that story is being interrogated line by line. Not by commentators, not by Twitter, by barristers whose entire job is to poke holes until something collapses. And something is collapsing. Because courts don't care how something felt. They care about what can be proven. They don't care about vibes or trauma language or moral framing. They want timelines, documents, consistency. And Harry's problem is that his past doesn't line up neatly with his present claims. He wasn't always hostile to the press. In fact, there were years where he played along, leaked stories, friendly access, quiet cooperation when coverage benefited him. That's not an accusation. That's how the royal media ecosystem worked. Everyone knew the rules. But now, years later, he's trying to retroactively recast that entire period as one long abuse campaign. And when journalists come forward and say, actually, no, you invited us, it doesn't just weaken his case, it reframes his entire narrative. That's why this trial feels so brutal. It's not just about what journalists did, it's about who Harry was back then and whether he's being honest about it now. And watching him confront that in real time, it's painful. There's this moment people in the courtroom talked about, him sitting there, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes unfocused, like he's somewhere else entirely. Not defiant, not angry, just drained. This isn't the Harry from the book tours. This isn't the Harry from the interviews. This is someone realizing that belief doesn't equal proof. And here's where Meghan's absence becomes impossible to ignore. Because lover or hater, Meghan has always been the strategist, the message shaper, the one who understands optics, timing, narrative arcs. When she's present, things are controlled, polished, framed. Her not being there tells you everything you need to know. This isn't a PR moment. This is a liability. And that silence, it creates a vacuum. People fill it with their own conclusions. Is she distancing herself? Is this a legal decision, a personal one? Or is it simply that this case no longer fits the story they want to tell? Whatever the reason, Harry feels exposed without her, like the armor is gone. And look, before anyone jumps in, yes, he's allowed to fight cases on his own. Yes, couples don't have to be joined at the hip. But when your entire brand has been unity, absence becomes a statement whether you want it to or not. Now, let's talk about the public reaction, because this matters more than Harry probably wants to admit. People aren't reacting with outrage, they're reacting with fatigue. There's a sense of, we've heard this already. Another lawsuit, another grievance, another demand for accountability from a man who has monetized his own story to an unprecedented degree. And that's the contradiction he can't escape. You can't position yourself as a private citizen while operating like a media empire. You can't condemn exposure while selling access. You can't ask for sympathy while attacking people by name in open court. And people see that now. Not just royal watchers in the UK, but international audiences too. Americans especially are looking at this and thinking, wait, didn't you already tell us all this? That's why this moment feels different. The patience is gone. And then there's the lawyers leaving. I keep coming back to that because it's such a loud signal. Legal teams don't walk unless something is deeply wrong. Either the evidence isn't there or the client won't listen. And if it's the second one, that's even worse, because it suggests Harry is trapped in his own certainty, that he can't adjust, can't recalibrate, can't accept that maybe, just maybe, his interpretation isn't the only valid one. That's a dangerous place to be.
At this point, the trial isn't just judging journalists, it's judging credibility, consistency, judgment. And Harry is losing ground. This was meant to be his reckoning with the press. Instead, it's becoming a reckoning with himself. Quick check-in. If you're still watching, drop a comment. Do you think this case was ever winnable, or was it doomed the moment it left the realm of storytelling and entered a courtroom? Because the saddest part of all this is that Harry clearly believes in what he's saying. He believes he was wronged. He believes he's fighting for something bigger. But belief isn't enough when your own history keeps contradicting you. And now, every day he sits in that courtroom, the gap between who he thinks he is and how he's being perceived gets wider. The lonely prince, the abandoned soldier, the man who thought truth alone would save him. London has a way of stripping illusions bare. Cold rooms, hard benches, no applause, no edits, just questions and answers that don't always go your way. If this case collapses, and all signs point that way, it won't just close a chapter, it'll force a rewrite of everything that came after. And rewriting is harder when the world is watching you do it live. If you found this breakdown thoughtful, hit like, subscribe for more deep dives like this, and share your take below. I read the comments, even the spicy ones. And genuinely, thank you for spending your time here with me. I appreciate it more than you know.